It starts quietly, a whisper, a joke at your expense, a shift in tone, a glance that lingers too long, a smile that hides something sharper. Most people dismiss it. They brush it aside, telling themselves it's not worth reacting to until it happens again, louder, sharper, more public. By the time they decide to respond, it's already too late, because ignoring disrespect is in effect. Approving it, Machiavelli understood this better than anyone in a world driven by power, reputation, and dominance. Respect isn't something you earn. It's something you command when someone disrespects you. Your next move changes everything, not just what they think of you, but what everyone watching will learn about how you allow yourself to be treated. Disrespect rarely begins as a personal attack. It's a test, and if you fail, you're not just marked as weak, you're marked as safe to disrespect again. So when disrespect comes your way, act immediately, not later, not in theory. Now, first rule, never react emotionally. The one who reacts in anger loses status. The one who withdraws with strategy becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability breeds respect. Even fierce silence is not ignorance. Silence is withdrawal of energy. Don't laugh it off. Don't explain. Yourself, don't deny it. Make your absence felt. In your gaze, your tone, your refusal to keep their energy alive. Create a sudden void in the rhythm they intended to control. Disrespect thrives on feedback. Laughter, defensiveness, appeasement. Remove that fuel, meet it with cold stillness, and it collapses into the weak grab for dominance that it is. Machiavelli never struck first. He observed, he let his enemies expose themselves fully before he acted. And when he did, it was precise, never apologetic. Always calculated your next move. Reflect the violation, not with insult or retaliation, but with calm exposure. Disrespect expects an emotional reaction. It thrives on insecurity. Instead, meet it with control, hold eye contact, tilt your head, and say something measured. Did you mean it that way? You sure you want to repeat that? That sounded personal. Care to clarify before I respond? These aren't words, they're surgical incisions. You're not denying the offense, you're forcing it into the open. You invite them to repeat it, to commit again and make it public. Most won't, because most who disrespect aren't fearless. They're opportunistic. They test boundaries, searching for weakness. When they meet cold clarity and silent tension, doubt begins to creep in, and that doubt, that is where your power begins. What you want is not revenge, not drama. You want doubt, because the person who plants doubt, the one who makes others hesitate, second-guess themselves, correct their tone around them, doesn't need to demand respect. They project it effortlessly, but here's where the game gets deeper. One confrontation can be handled. What most cannot endure is consistency. If someone disrespects you once and you address it, fine, but if they sense the door is still ajar, if your energy softens again later, they will test it again. The third step is this: reframe the relationship immediately. Don't return to normal. Don't pretend nothing happened. Redraw the boundary in your speech, in how you show up, in the distance you now maintain. Machiavelli understood this. A public, well-timed demonstration of discipline doesn't just end a threat, it teaches the entire room. If the disrespect occurred in public, let your new posture speak louder than any comeback ever could. Withdraw warmth, sharpen your tone, decline invitations, don't announce the change. Let them feel it. This is what separates the respected from the overlooked. Not domination through force, but presence through principle. You've shown them, I am not available for this, and I will not explain myself to make you comfortable. Now the social current has shifted. Others take note. They tread more carefully. Your name is spoken with calculation rather than ease, because the person who cannot be disrespected is not the loudest. It is the one who knows what to do the moment it happens, not with noise, but with controlled silence, piercing clarity, and an unwavering refusal to value comfort over self-respect. That is how you end it before it begins. Not with anger, not with ego, but with what they least expect. Discipline, distance, and total command of the room. Disrespect is never isolated. It is a signal, a probe, a calculated flick to test your limits. The moment you allow one violation, an insult disguised as a joke, a subtle dismissal, a backhanded compliment, You teach everyone what your silence costs, Machiavelli would tell you. Once they see you as easy to violate, reclaiming control costs twice as much. So after that first encounter, after stillness, after measured control, after distancing yourself, what comes next is critical. People will test your boundaries again. Not in the same way, not openly. More subtly, they will joke again. This time with a smile. They will exclude you under the guise of oversight. They will drop a passive remark. Watching your reaction closely, that is when you make your second move. Reinforce the frame through disproportionate consequence. Machiavelli's philosophy was never built on fairness. It was built on effectiveness. He understood something most people today refuse to admit. If the punishment matches the offense, it is soon forgotten. But if it exceeds it, it becomes unforgettable. You're not reacting emotionally. You're sending a message. You do not get to play with me twice. When they cross the line again, you grow colder, not louder if the offense happened in public. Your reply must be public too, but surgical, not spiteful precision over passion. They make a comment. You pause, hold your gaze, address the rest of the group instead of replying directly. They ask you a question, respond with a single word, then shift your attention elsewhere. They try to reclaim your warmth. You give them the social equivalent of a closed door. Polite, formal, distant. It's not aggression, it's removal. You are not trying to defeat them. You are showing something far more powerful. They have lost access, and that is what wounds most. Not insult, not humiliation, but being ignored by someone who once acknowledged them. This is where most people fail. They want to be liked. They want to smooth things over. They cling to the illusion that forgiveness earns respect. Machiavelli would laugh at that. Respect is not granted through mercy. It is earned through calculated consequence, delivered in silence, not in rage. And here your true leverage begins. People are always watching. They saw the disrespect. They saw how you responded. And now they watch again to see if you will return to old patterns, or if you truly meant what you projected. This is your moment to recast your image, because image, Machiavelli taught, is more powerful than truth. And your image after conflict becomes either your armor or your exposure. You want your silence to speak volumes. Let it be read as, he does not tolerate that, or she will not engage when disrespected, or you only cross this line once. You get one chance with them. When your name begins to carry those associations, disciplined, unshakable, untouchable, everything changes. People speak more carefully around you. Jokes in your direction disappear. Introductions shift. They describe you as no nonsense, sharp, intense. That is your new power. You didn't demand it, you built it. One surgical response at a time, but there is one deeper layer, harder to master. Some people won't stop at public shame. They don't care about approval. They crave your reaction. They thrive on destabilizing others, on being the disruptor, testing boundaries for sport. When these types meet someone like you, they either escalate or retreat entirely. If they escalate, that is your cue for the next level. You do not meet them emotionally. You meet them socially. Leverage their disrespect against them. Do not rise to the bait with noise. Escalate with precision. If they hold influence, a reputation, or a role, frame them with surgical accuracy. Let their behavior define them, subtly or openly, always with control, for example. That's an interesting joke. Do you use that one at work too? If you speak to friends like that, I'd hate to hear how you talk to strangers. I'm surprised you said that out loud. You are not arguing. You are spotlighting. You force them to wear their own words before others, and then their confidence shrinks. Not because you overpowered them, but because you made the room remember what they truly are. Small, noisy, insecure. This is the art of Machiavellian retaliation. It is never loud. It is never rushed. It is measured, targeted, and executed with such calm precision that they may not even realize how completely they've been checkmated. And the best part, you remain calm, poised. You let the disrespect hang, then collapse it into something they now own. That is how you build power in silence. Not merely by refusing to react, but by making every act of disrespect a step toward their own exposure from then on. You never chase respect again. They all know. You do not argue. You do not explain. You do not tolerate. You end it quietly, surgically, permanently. Here is what most people do not understand. Disrespect does not thrive on boldness. It thrives on safety, not your safety. Theirs. They insult you when they believe you will not respond. They mock you when they assume there will be no consequence. They push because they are certain you have never pushed back. That is the fuel of disrespect. The assumption you will do nothing. Machiavelli knew better. He understood that power is not about striking often. It is about creating the sense that you could, that at any moment you might choose to respond in a way they never expected and cannot control. This is the next level. You become a threat without ever threatening. You do not need to say it. You make them feel it. You don't need to speak. You just need to become harder to predict from this moment on. When someone disrespects you, and you've already made your boundary clear, your goal is no longer to make them like you. It is to make them uncertain of you, not fearful, not intimidated, just unsure. Did I go too far? Why is he so quiet? What is she thinking? Why didn't they respond like before? That uncertainty becomes your shield, because people avoid what they cannot read. This is why Machiavelli warned against being too transparent, too consistent, too predictable. A ruler who is easy to understand is easy to control, but when you are silent, unreadable and controlled, when you respond once, coldly and surgically, then retreat again into stillness, you become an anomaly in social dynamics. Anomalies shift power. People defer to you, not out of fear, but instinct. The mind protects itself from what it cannot fully understand. Lean into that, speak less than expected. Observe longer than feels comfortable. Let every word you speak land, like a calculated strike. Here's the psychological truth most ignore. Respect does not come from being liked. It comes from being felt. When you enter a room and the air shifts, when voices lower, postures change, and tones adjust, that is not popularity. That is presence. Presence is built through contradiction. You do not always respond, but when you do, it cuts. You do not seek to dominate, but you refuse to be crossed. You do not ask for respect. You remove access the moment it is violated. That is how your energy becomes a warning, a silent, unspoken consequence wrapped in calm control. There is a final transformation. Viewmaster. You stop treating disrespect as personal. You begin treating it as information. Here lies the divide. Most people hear an insult and feel wounded. You hear it and think, there's the weak spot in them, they mock you. You do not flinch because you see through it. You see the insecurity, the jealousy, the fear, the projection, the desperate need to assert control where they feel powerless. That is the ultimate truth of power. When someone disrespects you, it reveals them, not you. You log it. You remember it and you move forward, not through forgiveness, but through calculation. Do they still have access to you? Should they be isolated publicly or privately? Do you use their disrespect to send a message to others, or let them disappear quietly? You are no longer playing emotional chess. You are orchestrating. Positioned as Machiavelli taught, the greatest power is the one that leaves others too afraid to cross your boundary, even in your absence. That is when you have won, not when they admire you, not when they praise you, but when your absence carries the same weight as your presence. The people who never get disrespected aren't always the loudest. They are the ones who have made disrespect too costly. Not through rage, not through revenge, but through disciplined silence, disproportionate consequence, and unapologetic self-enforcement. You don't play the social game the way they do. You play the power game. And when you do, everything changes. People hesitate before crossing you. Their jokes change tone. Their words soften. Their energy recalibrates because they know now you are not here to fit in. You are here to be respected. And if they cannot give that, you will leave them in a silence they will never recover from. There is a moment in every power dynamic, subtle but undeniable. The room recalibrates around you. It happens after the silence, after the boundary, after you have made it clear, without a word, that you are not someone to be crossed. It's not just that people stop disrespecting you. It's that they stop thinking they could. That is the final layer Machiavelli would insist upon. You do not simply respond to disrespect. You transform what you represent in their minds. Because in the end, power is not in your reaction. Power is in what people assume you will do. Even if you say nothing at all, you become someone whose limits are unknown, whose silence is not submission, but preparation, whose calm is not friendliness, but containment. Here is what most miss. Enforcing a boundary once is not the end. It is a reputation test, not only with the one who disrespected you, but with everyone who witnessed it, directly or indirectly. The moment someone crosses you publicly, everyone watches. They are asking, is your value self-regulated or audience-dependent? When you hold your frame under pressure, without exploding, apologizing, or seeking validation, they feel something they cannot name: certainty. And certainty is the rarest form of power. Certainty is the rarest trait in a world addicted to approval. This does not mean becoming cold or hostile. It means your warmth becomes a choice, not a default. You smile when you choose to. You speak when you decide it has value. You grant access only to those who prove they do not take it for granted. This is how you become untouchable, not through force, but through energetic value. And energetic value is built by subtraction. You subtract reactivity, neediness, over-explaining, justifying your presence, tolerating even 1% of disrespect disguised as a joke. That is when a new level of response emerges. The room slows when you enter. People do not interrupt you mid-sentence. They repeat your words later because they were measured and rare. You are no longer navigating the social terrain. You have become the terrain. Here is Machiavelli's most brutal insight. Men must be either respected or eliminated. In modern terms, either they recognize your value or they lose access to it. It is not revenge. It is consequence without drama. Those who disrespect you once and never again are not your problem. They are your lesson. But those who disrespect you subtly, repeatedly, manipulatively, those are the ones you do not correct. You vanish from their world, or worse for them. You rise in power while they fade into irrelevance, because in silence, you expose them, and in distance you remind them you were never truly accessible. They were merely tolerated. Once you make this shift, your posture toward the world changes entirely. You stop trying to be liked. You stop responding to indirect attacks. You no longer feel the need to prove you are the bigger person, because you understand what Machiavelli knew centuries ago. You never have to defend what you will not allow to be touched. They cannot disrespect you if they cannot reach you. They cannot undermine you if your standing never rested on their approval. They cannot provoke you if your silence makes them question their own place. This is the apex of psychological dominance. Not cruelty, not pride, but control over what you react to. Control over what energy you give back. Control over who even gets the opportunity to witness your reaction. This is how kings moved in Machiavelli's world, and this is how you move in yours. Not with rage, not with noise, but with a presence so disciplined, so exacting that violating it once is all they will ever need to remember. Because after that moment, you do not merely earn respect. You become the standard by which all others are measured. There is one final move. The moment when someone has disrespected you, and they realize they were wrong. You do not punish them. You do not forgive them. You do something far more powerful. When someone disrespects you and then understands they have erred, what do? That is the question that defines legacy. Because at that point, you are no longer reacting to. You are no longer reacting to the attack. You are shaping the narrative. You are sculpting perception. You decide who they become in the aftermath, and more importantly, who you become. Here is the final Machiavellian truth. Mercy can be more terrifying than punishment, because mercy, when given without warmth, carries a silent but cutting message. You are no longer a threat to me. That is how you end the game. After enforcing the boundary, after withdrawing your presence, after holding your frame in complete stillness and letting the silence echo, they may return. They may apologize, overcompensate, laugh nervously, attempt to go back to normal, test whether the ice has melted. And here lies your moment of ultimate control. You do not lash out. You do not smile. You do not comfort. You simply remain unchanged. No bitterness, no resentment, no explanation. You let them inhabit the new reality you have created. A reality where your gaze no longer seeks their presence, where your energy no longer bends to accommodate theirs, where they are no longer a player in your world, but a ghost drifting through it. This is not pettiness, it is power through absence, because nothing unsettles someone who tried to shake your frame more than realizing you never depended on them at all. You never sought validation, you never sought belonging. You never played by their rules. That is the final cut. When they understand that their disrespect not only failed to wound you, but elevated you, sharpened you, strengthened your respect, increased your distance, and made you untouchable. This is the role Machiavelli would have you play. Not the vengeful prince who strikes back at every slight, but the silent architect of consequence, the one who allows others to betray themselves in public while remaining calm, calculated, and always just out of reach, the one who never demands respect. Because everyone already knows, you make that mistake only once in the aftermath. You will notice something strange. Your name begins circulating quietly, not because of drama, but because of restraint. People will say things like, "He doesn't speak much." But when he does, or "I've never seen her lose her cool," or "You don't want to be on their bad side," or "Careful with them, they don't come back around." That is what you have built. A reputation so solid that people correct themselves around you. They check their tone, they reconsider their words, they wonder whether you are watching. Not out of fear, but because your presence carries weight from that moment forward. You no longer need to fight for respect. You have proven something rarer than dominance. You have mastered selective presence. You show up when you choose to. You speak when it matters and when you leave. Whether from a conversation, a dynamic, or a relationship, they feel it, because the person who cannot be disrespected is not just defended. They are defined. The one who cannot be disrespected is rarely the loudest in the room. They are the one whose attention is no longer taken for granted. Let them speak. Let them guess. Let them wonder what you will do next, because deep down, they already know if they cross the line. You will not explain. You will not argue. You will not chase. You will simply disappear. And that silence, disciplined, deliberate, absolute, will echo far louder than any comeback ever could forever. That silence becomes your final signature. Not an absence born of weakness, but of supreme control, a quiet so absolute that it transforms presence into power and makes restraint into reputation. Because in a world addicted to noise, to reaction, to the theater of proving oneself, the rarest form of influence is self-control. The ability to stand unmoved, unreadable, unclaimed. The ones who cannot be disrespected are not those who demand it, fight for it, or shout it into existence. They are those who have made it impossible to touch them without consequence. Not through anger, but through disciplined stillness. Not through domination, but through calculated absence. They do not need to prove themselves. Their power lies in the fact that others prove it for them, quietly, instinctively, without even realizing it. And that is the last lesson Machiavelli would give you. Power is not about reacting. Power is about becoming the person who makes reaction irrelevant, because the ultimate truth is this: the one who cannot be disrespected is not the one who speaks loudest. It is the one whose attention is no longer guaranteed. Let them talk, let them guess, let them wonder, let them fear, because if they cross the line, You will not explain. You will not argue. You will not chase. You will simply disappear, and that silence will echo forever. This is your transformation. Not a lesson in loudness, but in absence, not a war of words, but a war of will. Not about proving you are strong, but making others certain you already are. The one who cannot be disrespected becomes an anomaly. They are not defined by noise, reaction, or retaliation, but by an unshakable stillness, by the fact that their boundaries are immovable and their presence undeniable. Respect becomes their shadow, not given, not demanded, but assumed, and in that assumption lies the ultimate victory, because power is not won in a single battle. It is forged in every quiet moment you choose not to answer, every subtle absence that speaks louder than words, every unbroken frame under pressure. You become not someone who reacts, but someone who reshapes reality, someone whose silence is the final word, and that is why, in the end, the loudest voice in the room is not the one shouting, it is the one who no longer needs to speak at all. This is where the lesson becomes legend, where theory becomes a lived reality, where you stop reacting to the world and begin to move it, because the one who cannot be disrespected is not the loudest in the room. They are the one whose attention is no longer owed. They have made disrespect too expensive, not through noise, not through force, but through disciplined absence, precise consequence, and unshakable control. They do not need to prove themselves. Their power is proven quietly, daily, by the choices they make, choosing silence over reaction, choosing presence over chaos, choosing absence over concession. In a world addicted to spectacle, they become a mystery, a presence so deliberate that it turns silence into authority. Respect is no longer something they seek. It is something others offer before being invited to speak. And this is the final truth. In the game of power, you do not need to win every battle. You need to win the war of presence. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them wonder what you will do next, because they already know. If they cross the line, you will not explain. You will not argue. You will not chase. You will simply disappear, and that silence will echo forever.